And we are ready to go. Okay, everybody. Hare Krishna. So, welcome everybody to the evening class in the Caitanya Charitamrta, or the reading of the Caitanya Charitamrta. So first, we're going to chant Jai Radha Madhava since we don't have any dancer recorded today. And so, let's pick up my guitar. Zoom out. Okay. Get my guitar. Madhuma Jaya Kunjabaya Jaya Randa Madhuma Jaya Kunjabaya Gopichana Madhava Jaya Giri Varuna Giri Varuna Gopichana Madhava Jaya Giri Varuna Giri Varuna Yasodanandana Jaya Prachajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Prachajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Charinayo Kunjabiyari Kunjabiyari Yamuna Tiravana Charinayo Kunjabiyari Kunjabiyari Jaya Ram Namadava Kunjabiyari Jaya Ram Namadava Kunjabiyari Gopinana Padava Giri Varunari Jaya Giri Varunari Gopinana Padava Jaya Giri Varunari Jaya Giri Varunari Yasodananda Prachajana Ranjana Yasodananda Prachajana Ranjana Yamuna Tirava Charinayo Kunjabiyari Kunjabiyari Yamuna Tirava Charinayo Kunjabiyari Kunjabiyari Jaya Ram Namadava Kunjabiyari Jaya Ram Namadava Kunjabiyari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paramacharia Alstatana Tatashi Srimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Charana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shilahira Thakur Ki Jai Haram Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidway Radha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopikapatnath Shyam Kun Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuranam Ki Jai Jagadasami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda, Nama Om Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pacharini Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarni. So, Omagana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shlakya Chakshur Unmeritam Yena Tasmai Shigurve Namaha. So I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my divine spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torch light of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, we're going to continue with our reading of Caitanya Caritamrta from the Adi Lila, chapter 5. But before we continue, I just want to ask everybody again to please pray for my dear god brother, Jai Pataka Maharaj, who got the COVID virus, and he's in a precarious situation. I don't have any new reports other than he's still in Mayapur and seems to be doing all right. So we want everyone to pray for his continued health or participation in the Krishna conscious movement, because he's an extremely valuable devotee and very dear to Srila Prabhupada and very dear to all of us. So many nice devotees. I'm so fortunate to be a member of the Krishna conscious movement with so many wonderful Vaishnavas, god brothers, god sisters, god aunts, god uncles, god nephews. I don't have any god uncles, anyway, in the movement, that is. God nephews, god disciples. Anyway, I have to keep myself from being too humorous. Okay, so now we'll continue with the Caitanya Caritamrta, and we're going to share the screen. And as we mentioned, we'll give everybody the opportunity, not everybody, but, first 2 or 3 people, to read after I get finished with my section of the reading. We're in the middle of the purport. I believe it's text 41, yeah. The middle of the purport in text 41, in the 5th chapter of the Adi Lila. Okay, here we go. And let me put the participant window down there. And so anybody who does want to read or participate in the reading after I read, please raise your hand in the participant window, not on screen. Okay, so we're in the middle of this purport, and this purport is defeating Shankaracharya's presentation about Krishna. And in this purport, the Acharyas, specifically Srila Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami and others, make it very clear that all of the expansions of Krishna are simultaneously existing. They do not come into being nor go out of existence at any one time. So, let's continue. Krishna is one without a second, but he manifests himself in different bodies, as stated by Narada in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Chitram bhataye tade kena vapusha yugapat pratak greshu dvashta saha sham striya eka udavahat. It is wonderful indeed that one Krishna has simultaneously become different Krishnas in 16,000 palaces, 2,000 queens as his wives. That's from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 69th chapter, text 2. The Padma Purana also explains, Sadevo Bahuda Bhutva Nirguna Purushottamaha Eki Bhuya Punashite Nirdosho Harirati Krit. The same personality of Godhead, Purushottam, the original person who is always devoid of material qualities and contamination, can exhibit himself in various forms and at the same time lie down in one form. That's exactly what I've been talking about. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Yajanti tvam mayas tvam vai bahu murtika. O my Lord, although you manifest yourself in varieties of forms, you are one without a second, therefore pure devotees concentrate upon you and worship only you. Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 40th chapter, text 7. In the Kurma Purana, it is said, Ashtulas tana nuschaiva stulo nuschaiva sarvataha avarna sarvata prokta shaimo raktanda lochana. The Lord is personal, although impersonal. He is atomic, although great, and he is blackish and has red eyes, although he is colorless. By material calculation, all this may appear contradictory, but if we understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has inconceivable potencies, we cannot accept these facts as accept these facts as eternally possible in him. In our present condition, we cannot understand the spiritual activities and how they occur, but although they are inconceivable in the material context, we should not disregard such contradictory conceptions. Although it is apparently inconceivable, it is quite possible for the Absolute to reconcile all opposing elements. Srimad Bhagavatam establishes this in the 6th canto, 9th chapter, texts 34 to 37. O my Lord, your transcendental pastimes and enjoyments all appear inconceivable because they are not limited by the causal and effective actions of material thought. You can do everything without performing bodily work. The Vedas say that the Absolute Truth has multifarious potencies and does not need to do anything personally. My dear Lord, you are entirely devoid of material qualities. Without anyone's help, you could create, maintain, and dissolve the entire qualitative material manifestation, yet in all such activities you do not change. And of course, we have that first verse in the Ishopanishad, Om Purnam Purnamidam, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. Even though so many complete, perfect manifestations come from him, he remains the perfect and complete person. You do not accept the results of your activities like ordinary demons and demigods who suffer or enjoy the reactions of their activities in the material world. Unaffected by the reactions of work, you eternally exist with your full spiritual potency. This we cannot fully understand. Because you are unlimited, just one point I want to make. If you could understand God, he wouldn't be God. You see, he's beyond logic. He's beyond the rules of cause and effect. He's beyond time. He's beyond space. Phew. So at least we can appreciate him. Because you are unlimited in your 6 opulences, no one can count your transcendental qualities. Philosophers and other thoughtful persons are overwhelmed by the contradictory manifestations of the physical world and the propositions of logical arguments and judgments, because they are bewildered by word jugglery and disturbed by the different calculations of the scriptures. Their theories cannot touch you, who are the ruler and controller of everyone, and whose glories are beyond conception. Your inconceivable potency keeps you unattached to the mundane qualities, surpassing all conceptions of material contemplation. Your pure transcendental knowledge keeps you beyond all speculative processes. By your inconceivable potency, there is nothing contradictory in you. People may sometimes think of you as impersonal or personal, but you are one. For persons who are confused or bewildered, a rope may appear to manifest itself as different kinds of snakes. For similar confused persons who are uncertain about you, you create various philosophical methods in pursuance of their uncertain positions. Someone's sending a chat. I have to check out. So Prangovinda has a complaint. If the infinite cannot reveal to finite, then he is not infinite. The infinite can reveal himself to the finite, but the finite, by definition, cannot fully understand the infinite. He can reveal himself. Certainly Krishna reveals himself. But so you can say, if the infinite wanted to let the finite understand him, well, because the infinite is expanding unlimitedly at every minute, even he himself has this pastime of not understanding his own glories, because he's infinite and is infinitely expanding at every infinite moment. And that's his pastime, that's his desire. And the reason share is not showing the complete screen. Wait a second. I got this comment. The share is not showing the complete screen. Hold on a second. That is a problem. Let me just check to see if that's true or not true. I have to double check on my phone.
That's a problem with all.
All right, let me just check this. Ooh, you are right. There's a section of it which is blocked off. That's weird. Let's see if I can. It says Zoom at the bottom. I will just be reading from the top portion, so you may not be able to see the bottom portion. I don't know why it's blocking off the bottom portion over there. You are right about that. 3 sections of black rectangles. I see one on the top. And one on the bottom. Okay, let me stop the screen share and go back. Oh, I see what the problem is. Okay. Let me get rid of the one on the right. And the one on the bottom, I will get rid of. And the one on the, whoops, there's one in the middle, I will get rid of also. Doesn't usually do that. Let me just check, make sure. Yeah, it shouldn't be doing that. Okay. All right. Should be all right now. So the one in the middle should be gone. Okay. Anyway, just try to tolerate. Yeah, it's gone now. Okay. Okay. So, all right, continue. We should always remember, now more people are asking questions. Wait a second. If you're going to ask a question, it'll make me block the screen at this particular point. All good, okay. We should always remember the differences. Somehow or other, this Zoom is doing that now. We should always remember the differences between spiritual and material actions. The Supreme Lord, being all spiritual, can perform any act without extraneous help. In the material world, if we want to manufacture an earthen pot, we need the ingredients, a machine, and also a laborer. But we should not extend this idea to the actions of the Supreme Lord, for he can create anything in a moment without that which appears necessary in our own conception. When the Lord appears as an incarnation to fulfill a particular purpose, this does not indicate that he is unable to fulfill it without appearing. He can do anything simply by his will, but by his causeless mercy he appears to be dependent upon his devotees. He appears as the son of Yashodamata, not because he's dependent on her care, but because he accepts such a role by his causeless mercy. When he appears for the protection of his devotees, he naturally accepts trials and tribulations on their behalf. Now, this is something very similar to what Prabhupada says in the beginning of the Krishna book, where he says the activities of Pritranaya Sadhunam Vinashaya Chadushkritam can be accomplished without Krishna coming down. Because, as described, Krishna has multifarious energies, Parasha Shaktira, Vividaya Shuyute, Swabhavaki Jnanabala Kriyacha. Not only that, but his energies are all first-class servants of his. And not only that, he is up to kama. That means he gets whatever he wants. His energies do whatever he wants when he wants it without him even asking for it. And not only that, he's Swarati. He's independent, as described by the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he decides to do whatever he does out of natural love for his devotees and out of a desire to enjoy. Because he can protect his devotees, he can annihilate the miscreants, he can establish religious principles through whatever means he wants to without coming down to this world. But he comes down to enact his various pastimes and to enjoy in association with devotees. And out of compassion, he wants to show his real nature so those in the material world will not speculate. Of course, they do speculate, but at least the sincere souls will be left with a perfect manifestation by which they can understand the true nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the Bhagavad Gita it is said that the Lord, being equally disposed toward every living being, has no enemies and no friends. Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dvisho stinapriha. But that he has special affection for a devotee who always thinks of him in love. Therefore, neutrality and partiality are both among the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and they are properly adjusted by his inconceivable energy. Well, it's very easy to understand the Lord's neutrality and partiality because he gives everyone equal opportunity. But yeyatam mam prapajante tam sataiva pajamiham mamavart marnu vartante manusha partha sarvasha. Everyone approaches Krishna and Krishna reciprocates with everybody. So he appears to be partial, but it's simply reciprocation because he has equal love for every living entity. The Lord is Parabrahman, or the source of the impersonal Brahman, which is his all-pervading feature of neutrality. And his personal feature, however, as the owner of all transcendental opulences, the Lord displays his partiality by taking the side of his devotees. Partiality, neutrality, and all such qualities are present in God. Otherwise, they cannot be experienced in the creation. In other words, apparently contradictory qualities, which can be explained and justified in different ways, as I just did with neutrality and partiality. Since he is the total existence, all things are properly adjusted in the absolute. In the relative world, such qualities are displayed in a perverted manner, and therefore we experience non-duality as a perfect perverted reflection. So in other words, the non-duality of the spiritual world we experience in the material world in a perverted way. 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita explained very nicely. Because there is no logic to explain how things happen in the realm of spirit, the Lord is sometimes described as being beyond the range of experience. Atakshi Krishna namadi nabhave grayamendriyat. But sevamukhehi jivado swayameva sparachada. That with these mundane senses, we cannot appreciate the existence of the Lord. But if we begin to serve the Lord, Sevan Mukhehi Jivawado, beginning with the tongue, swayam eva sparachita, then these things begin to become manifest to us. But if we simply accept the Lord's inconceivability, we can then adjust all things in Him. Actually, once you accept that, it's really easy to understand how these contradictory qualities can manifest in the Lord's activities and the Lord's nature. Non-devotees cannot understand the Lord's inconceivable energy, and consequently, for them, it is said that He is beyond the range of conceivable expression. The author of the Brahma Sutras accepts this fact and says, Shute stu shabda mulat vat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being inconceivable to an ordinary man, can be understood only through the evidence of Vedic injunctions. The Skanda Purana confirms, Achincha kalu ye baba tatwams tarkena yojiyat. Matters inconceivable to a common man should not be a subject for argument. We find very wonderful qualities, even in such material things as jewels and drugs. Even, or indeed, their qualities often appear inconceivable. Therefore, if we do not attribute inconceivable potencies to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we cannot establish His supremacy. It is because of these inconceivable potencies that the glories of the Lord have always been accepted as difficult to understand. And actually, the material world, as Prabhupada says here, that the qualities of the material world or the interactions of the material world or the complexity of the material world is inconceivable. As you all know, from time to time, I've been studying cellular biology, that is, what's happening in the cell. And each and every cell is, I would say, infinitely complex with infinite mechanisms in it that are all coordinated with each other. So I can't even understand what's happening in the cell. I mean, I know certain things that are happening. The scientists don't understand why this happens or how the mechanisms came about. And the scientists, talking about quantum mechanics, for example, which is not cellular biology, many scientists, practically every scientist I've talked to, and these are scientists who work in quantum mechanics or with quantum energy, they say if anyone says that they understand quantum mechanics, they don't understand quantum mechanics. It's actually inconceivable. Even Einstein was bewildered. You know, he talked about something called spooky action at a distance. And I'm not going to describe what it is. It's not that important for you all to understand. But he called it spooky, and he denied that it existed, or he thought it didn't exist, but actually it does exist. It's inconceivable. So even if you examine the material energy in minute detail, or in a macrocosmic scale, then it's inconceivable how things are happening, you know, with the planets or however. It's just completely inconceivable. What to speak of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the cause of all these causes. Ignorance and the jugglery of words are very common in human society, but they do not help one understand the inconceivable energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we accept such ignorance and word jugglery, we cannot accept the Supreme Lord's perfection and six opulences. For example, one of the opulences of the Supreme Lord is complete knowledge. Therefore, how could ignorance be conceivable in Him? Vedic instructions and sensible arguments establish that the Lord's maintaining the cosmic manifestation and simultaneously being indifferent to the activities of its maintenance cannot be contradictory because of His inconceivable energies. To a person who is always absorbed in the thought of snakes, a rope always appears to be a snake. And similarly, to a person bewildered by material qualities and devoid of knowledge of the Absolute, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears according to diverse, bewildered conclusions. So it's interesting. We talk about, just a side note, we talk about Krishna being omniscient. But also there's the contradictory quality that Krishna has when he's performing pastimes, in which he manifests himself as not knowing certain things. So you got this contradictory quality manifest in the pastimes. course, that's under the influence of Yogamaya, which Krishna voluntarily puts himself under. Actually, he wants Yogamaya to bewilder him in this way, or not precisely bewilder him, but cause him to forget that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it seems like he even forgets he's God. So he's omniscient, and then he even forgets he's omniscient under certain circumstances. This is inconceivable and apparently contradictory, but it's all Lila. Someone might argue that the Absolute would be affected by duality if he were both all cognizance, Brahman, and the personality of God with six opulences in full Bhagavan. To refute such an argument, the aphorism Swarupa Dvayam Ikshate declares that in spite of appearances, there is no chance of duality in the Absolute, for he is but one in diverse manifestations. In other words, he's everything simultaneously. Understanding the Absolute displays varied pastimes by the influence of his energies, and once removes the apparent incongruity of his inconceivably opposite energies. And that's something like I described with Yogamaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 4th Chapter, Text 16, gives the following description of the inconceivable potency of the Lord. Karamanyani hasya bhavo bhavasyate durgashrayo tari vayat palayanam kalatmano yat pramada yutashraya swatman vate kidyati dirvitamiha. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to do, he nevertheless acts. Although he is always unborn, he nevertheless takes birth. Although he is time, it's really interesting. So apparently contradictory things. He has nothing to do. In other words, everything is happening by his energy. But why does he act? Because he wants to. He enjoys. And for the pleasure of his devotees. Although he is always unborn, he nevertheless takes birth. So he doesn't really take birth. He appears to take birth. Because even before he apparently took birth from Devaki and Vasudeva, he appeared in his full-blown Vishnu form. Although he is time fearful to everyone, he flees Mathura in fear of his enemy to take shelter in a fort at Ranchorji. And although he is self-sufficient, he marries 16,000 women. Well, he doesn't have to marry the women for his happiness. But he does that anyway for his pastimes, for his enjoyment. Everything Krishna, it's easy to understand Krishna. Everything he does is for his own happiness. Nothing is done because of necessity. And what we do things because of necessity. I chant Hare Krishna because I must chant Hare Krishna to connect to Krishna. I eat. Why do I eat? Well, there's a little enjoyment there too. I eat because I have to maintain this body. I won't have any energy for giving class. So everything has a cause to it, but Krishna is beyond all causes. He just does things because he likes to do them. Therefore, we call his activities Lila, or pastimes. These pastimes seem like bewildering contradictions even to the most intelligent. Had these activities of the Lord not been a reality, sages would not have been puzzled by them. Therefore, such activities should never be considered imaginary. Whenever the Lord desires, his inconceivable energy, Yogamaya, serves him in creating and performing such pastimes. The scriptures known as the Caritamrta Shastras are recognized, Vedic scriptures, it's a long purport, I have to give someone else an opportunity in a second, that have been accepted by the great acharyas. These scriptures are not products of the modes of passion and ignorance. Learned scholars and brahmanas therefore always refer to them as Sattvata Samhitas. The original speaker of these scriptures is Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is especially mentioned in the Moksha Dharma 349-68, which is part of the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. Liberated sages like Narada and Vyas, who are free from the four defects of conditioned souls, are the propagators of the scriptures. Sri Narada Muni is the original speaker of the Pancharatra Shastra. Srimad Bhagavatam is also considered a Sattvika Samhita. Indeed, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu declared Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam. Srimad Bhagavatam is a spotless Purana. Malicious editors and scholars who attempt to misrepresent the Pancharatra Shastras to refute their regulations are most abominable. In the modern age, such malicious scholars even commented misleadingly upon the Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken by Krishna, to prove that there is no Krishna. He's talking about Dr. Radha Krishna. How the Mayavadis have misrepresented the Pancharatra Ki Vidhi will be shown below. Okay, let's find someone to, hold on a second. I think we'll let Pran Govinda will allow you to unmute yourself. And you can read right now. Ready?
Yes, Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, start reading. Number one, in commenting.
Number one, in commenting on Vedanta Sutra 2.2.42, Sripad Sankaracharya has claimed that Sankarshana is a jiva, an ordinary living entity. But there is no evidence in any Vedic scriptures that devotees of the Lord have ever said that Sankarshan is an ordinary living entity. He is an infallible plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Vishnu category. He is beyond the creation of material nature. He is the original source of the living entities. The Upanishads declare, Nitto Nittanam Chetanas Chetananam. He is the supreme living entity amongst all the living entities. Therefore, he is Vibhu Chaitanya, the greatest. He is directly the cause of the cosmic manifestation and the infinitesimal living being. He is the infinite living entity, and ordinary living entities are infinitesimal. Therefore, he is never to be considered an ordinary living being, for that would be against the conclusion of authorized scriptures. The living entities are also beyond the limitation of birth and death. This is the version of the Vedas. It is accepted by those who follow scriptural injunctions and who have actually descended in the disciplic succession. Number two, in answer to Shankaracharya's commentary on Vedanta Sutra 2.2.43, it must be said that the original Vishnu of all Vishnu categories, which are distributed in several ways, is Mula Sankarshan. Mula means the original. Sankarshan is also Vishnu, but from him all other Vishnus expand. This is confirmed in Brahma Samhita 5.46, wherein it is said that just as a flame transferred from another flame acts like the original, so the Vishnus who emanate from Mula Sankarshan are as good as the original Vishnu. One should worship that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, who thus expands himself. Number three, in reply to the commentary of Shankaracharya on the 44th aphorism, it may be said that no pure devotees, strictly following the principles of Pancharatra, will ever accept the statement that all the expansion of Vishnu are different identities. For this idea is completely false. Even Sripad Shankaracharya, in his commentary on the 42nd aphorism, has accepted that the personality of Godhead can automatically expand himself variously. Therefore, his commentary on the 42nd aphorism and his commentary on 44th aphorism are contradictory. It is a defect of Mayavad commentaries that they make one statement in one place and contradictory statement in another place as a tactic to refute the Bhagavad school. Thus, Mayavadi commentators do not even follow regulative principles. It should be noted that Bhagavad school accept the quadruple forms of Narayan, but that doesn't mean that it accepts many gods. Devotees know perfectly well that the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is one without a second. They are never pantheists, worshippers of many gods, for this is against the injunction of the Vedas. Devotees completely believe with strong faith that Narayan is transcendental and has inconceivable proprietorship of various transcendental potencies. We therefore recommend that scholars consult the Logu Bhagavatamrita of Srila Rupa Goswami, where these ideas are explicitly stated. Sripad Shankaracharya has tried to prove that Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha expand through cause and effect. He has compared them with earth and earthen parts. That is completely ignorant. However, for there is no such thing as cause and effect in their expansion. Nannat jat sat asat param. The Kurma Puran also confirms Deha Dehi Vivedo Yam Neshara Vidyate Kachit. There is no difference between body and soul in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Cause and effect are material. For example, it is seen that a father's body is the cause of a son's body, but the soul is neither cause nor effect. On the spiritual platform, there are none of the difference we find in cause and effect. Since all the forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are spiritually supreme, they are equally controller of material nature. Standing on the fourth dimension, they are predominating figures on the transcendental platform. There is no trace of material contamination in their expansion because material laws cannot influence them. There is no such rule as cause and effect outside the material world. Therefore, the understanding of cause and effect cannot approach the full, transcendental, complete expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedic literature proves this.
Okay, you can stop for a second. Wait, stop for a second. I just want to explain something. So, cause and effect is dependent upon the time factor, and the time factor is prominent by its absence on the spiritual or in the spiritual plane. So, everything is eternally existent. So you don't have these rules. So that's the reason, well, not specifically just cause and effect, but the reason that people cannot understand the nature of God by speculation is they're using the material rules of logic, such as cause and effect and other rules like that, to try to understand God. It's described that even if you travel at the speed of mind, which is far faster than the speed of light, just like the speed of mind is so fast that instantaneously, if you think of a place, you're there, then you cannot even reach the end of this material universe. What to speak of piercing through the coverings of the material universe? What to speak of understanding the nature of the spiritual realm? What to speak of understanding the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So you can't apply the same rules. For example, let me give a mundane example of something that may give you an indication, like a metaphorical type of thing. In science, now we're just going to talk about mundane things. Forget about Krishna for a second. Of course, don't forget about Krishna too long. So in science, you have something called Newtonian science. Okay, and you have certain calculations that occur within Newtonian science, such as, gravity and how when something falls, it increases its velocity at a certain rate. And you also have to calculate the air resistance of that thing falling. And you can predict things based on that. Okay, very nice. But even the rules of what they call Newtonian science fall apart when you get to the quantum realm. What do I mean? The quantum realm means very small, nano realm, tiny, 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 smaller than the atom, and even on the atomic level. So when you get into that realm, even the rules of logic fall apart. Even in the material realm of small particles, the rules of logic fall apart. For example, let's say you have a computer, or forget about a computer right now, but let's say you can choose either between a 0 or a 1. Let's say you have a coin. Okay, let's take a coin, for example. You flip a coin, and, it's like heads or tails, right? That's a common understanding. But in the quantum realm, the coin can be both heads and tails simultaneously. Oh my God. I mean, that's inconceivable. In the quantum realm, we're talking about zeros and ones, okay, which is binary information, but we don't need to get into that. But let's say in the quantum realm, if you had a coin in the quantum realm, or in the quantum realm, a very tiny coin, the coin could be both heads and tails simultaneously. Phew. And so even you have the rules of cause and effect, or the rules of logic, or the rules of probability don't apply to the same extent, even maturely, when you get to the quantum realm. What to speak of the spiritual realm, which is completely transcendental, even to the quantum realm? How can we understand what's going on? In other words, when the scientists look at the quantum realm, they get bewildered. Of course, they're able to utilize certain aspects of the quantum realm. That's why we have these computers and other things like that, because there is some knowledge on how to manipulate certain aspects of the quantum realm. But at the same time, it's really inconceivable. And then you talk about the spiritual world, it's even more inconceivable. So it's just a mundane metaphor to try to help you understand how the spiritual world, or why the spiritual world would be inconceivable or beyond the law of cause and effect, beyond time. I mean, have you ever experienced anything beyond time? No. I mean, at least I don't remember. That's actually funny. I don't remember experiencing anything. You think of the contradiction there. And then, and then, even science is so bewildering. Like we talk about gravity, and science is it's described as the bending of space-time. How to conceive of that? We cannot conceive of what the bending of space-time is. I mean, scientists can do certain calculations. So the transcendental realm is infinitely beyond the quantum realm, or the bending of space-time, or any of these other things that appear so bewildering in this world, or the microcosmic interactions, or the intracellular or intercellular interactions. Whew. Incredibilissimo. Okay, so continue reading, and then hopefully finish the purport. So continue reading. Om Purnam.
The Vedic literature proves this. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete by itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanates from him, he remains the complete balance. Brihad Aranyak Upanishad 5.1. It is most apparent that non-devotees violate the rules and regulations of devotional service to equate the whole cosmic manifestation, which is the external feature of Vishnu, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the controller of Maya, or with his quadruple expansions. Equating Maya with spirit or Maya with the Lord is a sign of atheism. The cosmic creation, which manifests life in forms from Brahma to the end, is the external feature of the Supreme Lord. It comprises 1/4 of the Lord's energy, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Ekangsena Sthito Jagat. The cosmic manifestation of the illusory energy is material nature, and everything within material nature is made of matter. Therefore, one should not try to compare the expansions of material nature to the Chaturbuha, the quadruple expansions of the personality of Godhead. But unfortunately, the Mayavadi school unreasonably attempts to do this.
Okay, that's it for today. Then we'll stop sharing the screen and we'll take some questions. And spent the whole day today and part of the day yesterday on this purport. We still haven't finished. So much philosophy. I mean, amazing, amazing philosophy. So now we're going to give everybody an opportunity, or those of you who are bold enough to ask a question about what we just read. So, who has a question?
Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri.
No, it's Prabhupada. So, what's up?
Gurudev, yesterday we were talking about four kind of liberations we can get from God with God's mercy, and one of them is
Yeah.
a sahidya, which is oneness with the God. So
There's actually 5 types of liberation. Anyway, whatever. Okay, so usual.
yes, this is oneness with the God, and impersonalists talk about merging with the Brahman. So is merging with the Brahman and this sahudya is the same thing, or
Yes, that's the same thing. That's the same thing.
so? In impersonalist view, like we say that even you merge with the God, you will gonna come back to the material nature sooner or later.
That's right.
So if I merge with the, then how could it be liberation from the God side? If I'm merging with him, then I want to come back.
You're not actually merging. Do you remember what I was talking about yesterday with
Parrot and the
the
tree, yes, yes.
with the green what?
Hmm.
Green what that they talk about?
Then how could it be liberation to the
No,
word
no, no. You
liberation?
tell me what I was talking about. I'm asking you.
Oh
I
yes,
was
you
talking
talked
about.
about the yes, yes. I know. It's for the green parrot, and they go to a green tree. So
That's
it
right.
feels like they are merging, but they are not merging. They comes out of it, and I do understand impersonal Brahma. Our soul is in like in a what do you call it? Would be
Suspended animation. It's called
yes, it
suspended
is
animation.
suspended. So we by nature is a Sachidananda. Like we need the joy. The soul will need the joy, so it will come back and look for the uh, transcendental pleasure. So I do get that part, but how could it be a liberation when from the
Well,
God
it's
side?
it's not actually liberation. It's called vimukti manina in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That one thinks they're liberated, but it's not real liberation because you're still not in the spiritual world. You're in the spiritual effulgence, I guess, in that way you're in the spiritual world. But you haven't entered into the planets in the spiritual world. You're not situated in your eternal position. Your eternal position is Jivara Swarupohoi Nitya Krishna Das, as a servant of Krishna. So, in one sense, it's liberation because you're not in the material world, but in another sense, you're liberated from the material world, but you're not eternally liberated from the material world. So, it's not like an eternal situation because it's not the constitutional position of the living entity to be without action. So sometimes Prabhupada would give the example. It's like taking a child who's been very naughty and putting them in a corner and telling them just to stay still and not do anything. Now, the child may be relieved that he's not going to get punished, but he's not going to be very happy for a long period of time standing there in the corner, just looking at the corner. So after a while, Aruda Krishna Param Padam, the Bhagavatam says. What does that mean? He comes down and then he engages in mundane activities. He first comes down to the mode of goodness, like Prabhupada talks about how when the Mayavadis fall down, they open up hospitals and engage in welfare work. But because the modes of nature are in continual flux, that means struggle for supremacy within an individual, sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the mode of passion and ignorance, and sometimes the mode of passion becomes prominent, defeating the mode of goodness and ignorance. And anyway, then ultimately the Mayavadi succumbs to the lower modes of nature in spite of all of his intentions and determination. Just like you see Vishwamitra Muni, now he wasn't a Mayavadi, but Vishwamitra Muni was trying to control the senses, and he was pretty much in the mode of goodness, but then along comes good old Menaka, not old Menaka, please excuse me, good young Menaka, who was very beautiful, and then he succumbs to the mode of passion. So that's what happens to the Mayavadis when they come down. First, they open up hospitals, love, peace, and everything like that. And then after a while, then material world looks good. And then after a while, they get married. Nothing wrong with getting married, but if you're a Mayavadi, you better be careful. And then after that, then they start smoking marijuana. It's actually true. You see so many of these, oh my God, so many of these people, even with mystic powers in the 1960s and 70s who came from India, and they got into intoxication. And not only did they get into intoxication, I mean, even there was a person from Vrindavan, I'm not going to mention his name, and he became the guru of this famous LSD guru, Ramdas. And, he was into so many crazy things. And then there was another person who came to America and he established an illicit sex ashram and he became so much enamored by the material energy. And obviously he had some mystic powers from before that he decided he wanted a Rolls Royce for every day of the year. And ultimately he got arrested by the American government for bringing some things into America he shouldn't have been bringing in. Anyway, Aruya Kajena Padam Padam Padanchito Yushmad Angrayaha. They come down to the material world. So that's what happens when you merge in the Brahma Jyoti. You don't really merge, but you're floating there. It's suspended animation. After a while, you come out of it. So, who else has a question? I think Rishikesh has his hand up.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Yeah.
My question was about the universes, the higher level, higher dimension of universes. Does it depend on our consciousness? The higher consciousness, higher consciousness we have, we will have more access to the higher dimensions of the universe.
Yes, that's right. The better, purer your consciousness is, let's use the word purer, then you have more access to the higher dimensions of the universe. So
what does this purity mean, Gurudev? And how do we understand this purity?
Means being freed from the influences of the lower modes of nature. Passion and ignorance, and the more you're established in goodness. But there's danger, because even you go to the higher realms, like Indra, he's in the higher realm, not super high realms, but he's in the high realms. And then he actually succumbs to lust from time to time. And even you see Lord Brahma, and this is not a criticism because that would be an offense, he had trouble in the beginning of the creation. And he was in the high realms. Because the problem is, that even if one is on a very high level, even of devotional service, if one is not cautious, even if one has very purified consciousness, if one is not cautious, one can deviate because of a little bit of inattention. Prabhupada, of course, gave that famous example of devotional service being like a razor's edge. And Prabhupada was referring to straight razor, because that's the type they used to use in barbershops. And I still think they do in India too. And these straight razors are like big blades. I remember when I was young, going to the barber. That's when I had hair and was good looking. So, so went to the barber, and the barbers always use these big, long blades, and I was always getting nervous about it because they would trim your hair and everything like that with these long blades, and if they slipped, you could lose your ear. That's how sharp and dangerous they were. And so Prabhupada described devotional service to be like that too. One has to be very attentive because if one takes up the wrong association uh, and is not careful, then you could be gone for many years. Or if one commits offenses against Vaishnavas, great, great spiritual personalities. So one has to be very careful. And if one's very careful, one will always be happy. So, yes, so keep your consciousness. That means what? Satsanga chage Vaishnavachar. Keeping good association and avoiding bad association. It's the modes of nature again. Just like we've mentioned many times before about the modes of nature, and how when devotees they go into certain circumstances, like if they go home and there's people getting drunk, they get influenced because the modes of nature actually pervade the atmosphere. If you're around drunk people, or if you're around people who eat meat, or if you're around people engaged in illicit life, it's like there's a subtle vibration in the air, precisely in the air, in the ether. Let's use the word ether instead of air, that actually influences your consciousness. It's like wet paint, but it's very, very subtle. And then you find your consciousness being brought down to a lower level. So one has to be very careful of their association because so many things can influence us. So many things can influence us. And, I've seen that. Like, I mean, I'll give you an example of my own life, which is an interesting example. Because of all the political conflicts in America at present, I've been paying more attention to the news than ever before. Uh, Before Donald Trump was in office, I basically maybe looked at 5 minutes, I looked at the news a week just to make sure the world was still there. But now it's like it's become an object of my attention. I wouldn't say a major object. I'm still a devotee, still chanting my rounds and everything like that. So how does it affect my consciousness? I tell you something. The other night, I went to sleep, and as I was falling asleep, I was dreaming about, not dreaming, I was actually thinking about the politics of the United States Senate and Donald Trump. And then I pulled myself back and thought, what the heck? What the heck? What the heck am I doing? I'm supposed to be a devotee of Krishna. Now I'm thinking about all those other things, and if I were to leave my body, I would take birth as a guy who had red hair and orange skin. That would be pretty hellish. So, but it's interesting how our consciousness can become absorbed in so many things, even willingly or wittingly. just when we're checking the news, because it's at this point the news is so much more interesting than ever was before. It was quite boring. People are lamenting now that there's going to be a new president in the United States. That what are they going to do with their time now that they can't be interested in the news anymore? So anyway, apart from that, we have to be careful about who we associate with and what we do, because our association can influence our consciousness in many ways. Let's see who else has a question here. Okay. I think Champa Galata has a question, or she just has her hand up from before. No, she doesn't have a question. And Rishikesh's question I answered already. And
Gurudev?
Ran Govinda usually has. Adidev, you have a question, yeah.
Yeah, so we say that we have to be in mode of goodness. Then we go to the Vishuddha Sattva. So is it possible that someone in Tamogun can directly go to the Vishuddha Sattva, or he has to
Yeah.
go to the progression?
No, he can go directly by the association of pure devotees. I mean, look at Valmiki. Valmiki was in Tamagun, right?
Yeah.
He was completely in Tamagun. I mean, he was a dacoit and everything like that, and basically he couldn't even chant the name of Ram. I mean, that's how fallen he was. He was told, chant the name of Ram, and Valmiki said, what? Can't do it. But I can chant something else. Mara, 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 death, death, death. It's like a modern songs that they have. The young people, they chant, what, punk or junk or whatever types of music they have. So he chanted Mara, 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 and by Ram's association, he immediately was transformed to Vishuddha Sattva. His consciousness was transformed to Vishuddha Sattva. So by the mercy of a pure devotee, Dina Hina Yata Chilo.
Chila. Harinam.
Harinam Udarilo. And what is the evidence? Tara Sakshar Jagai Madai.
Jagai.
Isn't it? Narottam Das Thakur says, Dina Hina Yata Chilo Harinam Udarilo. Tara Sakshi Jagai Madai. The evidence is, look at Jagai and Madai. And they were drunkards. And they were chanting Hare Krishna, emulating Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's chanting in his kirtan. And then somehow or other, and Madai tried to hurt. He was so much in the mode of ignorance, he tried to hurt Lord Nityananda. He did hurt him. I mean, he hit him with a pot. And then just by feeling repentant and scared, they were scared. That's why they surrendered. I mean, what was their motivation? They were scared. And because they were scared, Akama Sarvakama Moksha Kama Daradi, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajeta Purusham Param. Even though their motivation was not pure, they were just scared they were going to get killed. I mean, here's the Sudasan Chakra. I mean, that's enough to get anyone to chant Hare Krishna or to surrender to Krishna. I mean, if I saw Krishna Sudasan Chakra, I would be the best devotee in the three worlds. I would immediately give up all. I wouldn't look at Donald Trump another time in my life.
But in this case, it will end up in Vaikunta, right? Because it's fear-based devotion, right?
No, it's fear-based. It's fear-based, but then they got purified. You understand? It doesn't matter what the motivation was. Just like Kubja, who was lust-based. It was lust-based, but then she got purified. Just like Dhruva Maharaj, it was greed-based. And then he became a pure devotee. So it doesn't matter, we were reading this verse the other day. It doesn't matter whatever one's motivation is, just think of Krishna, either out of fear, anger, lust, greed. I mean, of course, that doesn't mean that you should be greedy or lusty or fearful. I mean, it's better to be approaching at a mood of service and love. But if you can't do that, somehow or other think of Krishna and you'll get purified, ultimately. akama sarvakama mokshakama dharati. Tivrena bhakti yogena jeta purusham param. Bhagavatam states this. Even if you're just going to Satyanarayan Katha. I mean, I don't advocate Satyanarayan Katha. I think it's nonsense. Even though some devotees may do it to make a living. They'll say, oh, we'll do Satyanarayan Katha. But you can't. Prabhupada would never do that. Prabhupada would never do Satyanarayan Katha just to make a living. You know, that's completely against our philosophy. But even if someone is doing Satyanarayan Katha, then at least they're approaching Narayan. They're telling stories about how Narayan, I mean, just like in our temple in Fiji, to attract people to come, we have a big picture of Sudama Brahmana. Why do we have a big picture of Sudama Brahmana? It's practically the biggest picture in the temple in Fiji, not quite the biggest picture. Because people think, oh, if I give a few grains of rice, a little money to Krishna, then I will get rewarded with a mansion like Sudama Brahman. You know, isn't it? I mean, that attracts people. That's Satyanarayan Katha. You know, you just tell people this person worshipped Krishna, that person worshipped Krishna, and they got a mansion. Wow. So here's our donation box. Here's the hundi. And sometimes people are raising money to build a temple, and they have all these statements from the Puranas, which are true statements. You know, one who gives money to Vishnu liberates his forefathers. One who gives money to build a temple can become wealthy in this world and in the next. And you know, my philosophy is if you worship Krishna, you'll be happy because that you're like constitutional nature, you're a servant of Krishna. I'm not going to start to offer. I mean, people ask blessings all the time. Blessings, blessings, blessings. You know, we have people who come to our temple. They want their car to be blessed, so you have to bless their car. And then they want, so many blessings. Blessing their computers. They want their computers to be blessed, their car to be blessed, their pet cat to be blessed. I mean, it's ridiculous. All right. So this is the business of sannyasi. The only mantra a sannyasi has to learn is Ashivat. And then you can be successful. You don't even have to know how to chant Hare Krishna. All you have to do is raise your right hand, not like say raise your right hand to tell the truth, so the whole truth, so help you God. Raise your right hand and say Ashivat, and you will be wealthy. No more chanting Hare Krishna. Okay, on that happy note, I think we have to end. So tomorrow we'll see you all, same time, same station. All glories to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Whoops, I have to